Mitt Romney, of course, went to the United Kingdom and immediately put his foot in his mouth in a way that was obvious to the world. I mean, one of his advisors said that this was this was all about his Anglo-Saxon heritage. The Anglo-Saxon Appreciation Tour is what I was calling it last week. Anglo-Saxon, of course, being an old term that means blonde people. And, that word was used before in kind of the context of master race. And then he managed to insult the City of London, and he insulted the Prime Minister, and he insulted the mayor. And so Boris Johnson, I think his name is, the mayor of London, came out and just, went ballistic on him. And David Cameron, the Prime Minister, said, oh, yeah, you running in Olympics in the middle of nowhere, it's no big deal. But this is a big, vibrant city, one of the biggest in the world. So the question in my mind was, what kind of damage is he going to do when he goes to Israel? And now we know. And I find this just fascinating. The story that's probably getting the most press, well, actually the two stories that are getting the most press are Romney dissing the Palestinians and Romney praising the Israeli national healthcare system, which is based on nonprofit HMOs and an individual mandate. It's a universal healthcare system. So, and there's a there, by the way, in these, but the one that's not getting a lot of coverage, in fact, it's getting very, very little coverage. I'm astounded by how little coverage it's gotten, is Romney comparing Israel and the travel of Moses from the Nile, where there was water and they knew it was safe, out into the desert where there was nothing. And to quote Romney, they had to rely on themselves. Plays into his meme of, I'm rich because I'm a self-made man. And God. I'm rich because I'm a self-made man and I'm going to have my own planet when I die. That kind of stuff, right? Comparing, and I think, frankly, that what he was doing is he was comparing that with the journey of Brigham Young from, what was it, Indiana, I think, where Joseph Smith got killed? Maybe it was Illinois. It was somewhere in the Midwest. Joseph Smith had led his merry band of polygamists out of as I recall, New York State into the central Midwest. And then he got murdered by a couple of local guys who were upset that he was trying to hustle off their wives or their preteen daughters. And so so Brigham Young ended up taking the rest of the merry band out to Salt Lake City, which is the desert. And so in my mind, and this is, by the way, not to knock Mormons or Mormonism, every religion has its, shall we say, dicey history. I mean, go back and read the story of one of the direct descendants of Jesus, the story of Lot. If you really want to be scratching your head at the end of a little bit of Bible reading. But anyhow, here's Romney speaking at a breakfast to 40 very rich donors in Israel. Raised a lot of money there, by the way. He says, I was thinking this morning as I prepared to come into this room of a discussion I had across the country in the United States about my perceptions about differences between countries. He went on to talk about the difference between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. He said, this is a dramatic, stark difference in economic vitality. And that part of his speech is the part where it looks like he's trashing the Palestinians, or he's defining Israel and therefore presumably Jewish people who live there as literally the chosen people, something that I think even most modern Jews would disavow, because every religion thinks they're the chosen ones, right? We're God's special people. Just, ask Jimmy Swaggart, right? Ask some evangelist, pick your religion. So anyhow, Mitt says, as you come here and you see the GDP per capita, for instance, in Israel, which is around $21,000, and compare that with the GDP per capita just across the areas managed by the Palestinian Authority, which is more like $10,000 per capita. Actually, it's more like $1,700. It's much, much lower. Anyhow, he says, you notice such a dramatically stark difference in economic vitality. And as I come here and I look out over this city and consider the accomplishments of the people of this nation, I recognize the power of at least culture and a few other things, including the hand of providence. Now, many Palestinian leaders are saying, hey, wait a minute, we've got a problem because we're in occupied territory, one. And two, are you saying that those people are chosen by God and we're not? Is that really what you're trying to say, that God dissed us? I mean, we went through this with Rachel and Hagar, wasn't it? If I'm remembering my biblical history right. Probably not, but in any case. But here's where it gets really interesting, is where he's talking about, I think he's talking about Mormons. He says, one, I recognize the hand of providence in selecting this place. I'm told in a Sunday school class I attended, I think my son Tag was teaching in the class. He's not here. I look around to see. Of course, he's not here. He was in London. He taught a class, I'm quoting Romney here. He taught a class in which he was describing the concern on the part of some of the Jews that left Egypt to come to the Promised Land, that in the Promised Land was down the River Nile that would provide the essential water they'd enjoyed in Egypt. Now, it's a very badly constructed sentence. What he's trying to say is they're leaving their source of water. He said they came here recognizing that they must be relied upon themselves and the arm of God to provide rain from the sky. And this, therefore, represented a sign of faith and a show of faith to come here. That this is a people that has long recognized the purpose in this place and in their lives that is greater than themselves and their own particular interests, which is, very, very nice language. And to a large extent, there's a fair amount of truth in that. People stepping out and saying no to the Pharaoh and going off into the desert and taking horrible chances, and people taking horrible chances, even today, to go live in Israel. But the context, I think basically what he was saying is, us Mormons are just like you Jews. Or, vice versa. The Mormons do teach that Jesus did come to North America and appeared before the Native Americans the day that he was crucified, gathered 12 Native American disciples, trained them, left prophecies. I mean, that's all in the Book of Mormon. And then, of course, the Mormons went, across the country and into the desert, into Salt Lake City. Nothing there. A lake you can't even drink. Right? I just find it fascinating, and the whole disconnect between Mitt Romney as somebody who understands basically, the subtleties of international politics. I mean, if you're ever going to be the president, and you want to try and reconcile peace between Israel and the Palestinians, you don't start out by saying that the Israelis are the chosen people and they're prosperous because God loves them, providence, and the Palestinians are not because because he doesn't. You don't start out that way.